The silent landing commander Nia Vega felt the familiar thrum of atmospheric entry vibrate through the Meridian's hull as they descended toward Calverin 9. Through the viewports, the planet stretched below them like a museum piece, pristine cities of impossible geometry, frozen beneath a pale amber sky, their spires reaching toward space with architectural ambition that had died 3 centuries ago. Atmospheric composition is breathable, reported Lieutenant Marcus Hendricks, his fingers dancing across the sensor array. Temperatures holding steady at 18 degrees Celsius. No radiation signatures, no electromagnetic interference. He paused, frowning at his readings. It's almost too perfect, Commander. Dr. Zara Okafor, the team's xenoarchaeologist, pressed her face against the observation window. Look at those structures. No weathering, no erosion patterns. It's like someone hit a pause button on an entire civilization. Her voice carried the excitement of a scholar facing the discovery of a lifetime. Chief Engineer Dmitry Kozlov grunted from his station near the cargo bay. Dead worlds don't maintain themselves. Something's keeping those buildings intact. His cybernetic left arm whirred softly as he adjusted the landing thrusters. In my experience, when things look too good to be true, they usually are finished. Communications specialist Keiko Tanaka, her normally cheerful demeanor subdued by the eerie perfection below. Long-range comms are clear, though. Whatever happened here didn't leave any distress signals behind. The Meridian touched down in what appeared to be a central plaza, surrounded by towering structures that seemed to bend space around them. As the engines wound down, Vega studied her crew. 5 humans against the mystery of an entire world. They, United Earth Archaeological Commission, had chosen them for their expertise, but also for their ability to handle the unexpected. Final equipment check, Vega ordered, her voice cutting through the sudden silence. Full environmental suits until we know more about the atmosphere. Dr. Okafor, your priority is cataloging any intact technology. Kozlov, I want structural assessments of anything we enter. Hendricks, keep those sensors running. I want to know if so much as a dust mote moves wrong. Tanaka, maintain constant communication with Orbital Command. As they sealed their helmets and prepared to step onto Calverin 9, none of them noticed the subtle shift in the crystalline formations beneath the plaza or the way certain architectural elements seemed to track their landing with geometric precision. The dead world waited, patient as it had been for centuries, for its first visitors to take that crucial first step into its carefully preserved embrace. Whispers in the dust. Days on Calverin 9 had yielded discoveries that would reshape xenoarchaeological understanding. Yet Vega couldn't shake the growing unease that settled over the team like dust. The cities were too perfect, too preserved. No civilization simply vanished, leaving everything in museum condition. Commander, you need to see this. Dr. Okafor's voice crackled through the comm from 3 blocks away. She'd been cataloging artifacts in what appeared to be a government complex, its halls lined with statues of beings that resembled elongated humanoids with 6 arms and heads. That seemed to shift perspective depending on viewing angle. Vega found her staring at a wall covered in flowing script that seemed to move when observed peripherally. It's a historical record, Okafor explained, her scanner revealing layer upon layer of data. But, Commander, the dates. They're not talking about their past. These are entries from after their supposed extinction. Before Vega could respond, Kozlov's voice boomed through the comm system. We've got a problem at the temple complex. These readings make no sense. The temple district rose like crystalline mountains from the city's heart, each structure seemingly grown rather than built. Kozlov stood before the largest, his scanners painting wild patterns across its surface. Energy signatures are fluctuating, not decaying building, and there's something else. He gestured to his motion tracker. Every few minutes, I'm getting massive movement signatures from inside. Then nothing. Hendricks jogged up, his face pale behind his visor. Commander, I've been monitoring atmospheric changes. The ambient temperature is rising, and there are acoustic anomalies throughout the city. Subsonic frequencies that ... double quotes. He paused, looking embarrassed. That almost sound like voices. Tanaka's voice joined them from the communications hub they'd established near the ship. Orbital command confirms no unusual readings from space, but I'm picking up localized interference. It's getting stronger by the hour. As if summoned by their discussion, the whispers began. Soft at first, like wind through the preserved streets, but gradually becoming more distinct. Not words, exactly, but patterns of sound that tickled the edge of comprehension. Each team member heard them differently. Okafor caught mathematical sequences. Kozlov heard structural harmonics. Hendricks detected frequency modulations that resembled music. We need to investigate the underground chambers, Vega decided, watching her team's growing discomfort. If there are answers to be found, they'll be in the deepest parts of these structures. As they prepared their equipment for descent, none of them noticed the subtle changes occurring throughout the city. Statues that had faced east now looked west. Crystalline formations had grown by fractions of millimeters. And deep beneath their feet, something ancient was beginning to stir, responding to the warmth and electrical activity of human presence after centuries of cold, patient waiting. The awakening chamber, the descent into Calverin 9's depths, revealed architecture that defied human understanding. Corridors twisted through impossible geometries, leading the team ever downward through chambers that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the standard 3. Emergency lights from their suits cast eerie shadows that move independently of their sources. Structural integrity is holding, Kozlov reported, though his voice carried uncertainty. But the materials, they're not following standard physics. This alloy should have collapsed under its own weight centuries ago. Dr. Okafor documented everything with scientific fervor, her excitement overriding the growing dread that permeated the team. A preservation system must be active. Look at these murals. They're depicting some kind of transformation. The inhabitants didn't die. They ... double quotes. She paused, studying the flowing images. They deliberately entered stasis. The whispers grew stronger as they descended, and Hendricks had given up trying to rationalize the audio phenomena. The frequencies are increasing in complexity. It's almost like they're trying to establish communication protocols. After 3 hours of descent, they emerged into a vast crystalline chamber that stretched beyond their light's reach. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and the air itself seemed to thrum with barely contained energy. But it was the chamber's occupants that stopped them cold. Hundreds of figures stood in perfect rows, each one 7 feet tall, with the elongated limbs and multifaceted heads they'd seen in the surface statues. But these weren't stone, they were living beings, suspended in translucent cocoons of energy that flickered like contained aurora. My God, Tanaka whispered. They're not statues. They're sleeping. At the chamber's center stood a raised platform, covered in control surfaces that seemed to respond to proximity, glowing brighter as the humans approached. Symbols flickered across crystalline displays, showing what appeared to be system diagnostics and countdown sequences. Commander, Okafor's voice was tight with realization. I think this is a preservation vault. The entire civilization didn't. They put themselves into suspended animation. But why? Viga studied the readings on her scanner. Energy levels are spiking. Our presence is triggering some kind of revival sequence. She looked at her team, seeing her own growing alarm reflected in their faces. We need to determine if this is a good thing, or if we just woke up something that was meant to stay asleep. Kozlov moved toward the central console, his engineering instincts overriding caution. If I can access their systems, maybe we can understand what they were hiding from, or what they were guarding against. As his gloved hand reached toward the primary interface, the whispers suddenly ceased. The silence was more terrifying than the voices had been. Throughout the chamber, the energy cocoons began to pulse faster, and for the first time in centuries, ancient eyes began to flutter open behind translucent barriers. The guardians of Calvera 9 were awakening, and humanity was about to discover whether they were saviors or the very threat the planet's inhabitants had tried to escape. Truth beneath the first guardian to fully emerge from stasis moved with fluid grace that belonged to water rather than flesh. Its 6 arms unfolded like the petals of some alien flower, and when it spoke, the words bypassed the ears entirely, arriving as concepts directly in their minds. Small flesh beings of distant stars, you have come to the sealed world. Why do you disturb the great waiting? Commander Vega stepped forward, fighting every instinct that screamed at her to run. We are explorers from Earth. We came here seeking knowledge of your civilization. We didn't know you were alive. The Guardian's head tilted with mechanical precision, studying her with eyes that held the depth of geological time. Around the chamber, more cocoons were opening, releasing beings that moved to form a complex pattern around the humans. Not threatening, Vega realized, but protective. Earth spawn. Yes, we have watched your kind through the deep instruments. Young species, earning right and brief. You should not have come here. The Guardian's mental voice carried profound sadness. The devourer stirs when flesh minds gather. We sleep to deny its sustenance. Double quotes. Dr. Okuffer's scientific mind overcame our fear. What is the devourer? What were you protecting against? Images flooded their minds, not gentle communication this time, but a torrent of memory and terror. They saw Calvera 9 in its glory days, a civilization that had reached across star systems, built wonders that bridged dimensions. Then came the darkness, a presence that fed on consciousness itself, growing stronger with each mind it consumed. It came from the spaces between thoughts, the Guardian explained. Where your kind sees empty void, it found feeding grounds. Intelligence calls to it across impossible distances. Your arrival has sent ripples through dimensions we hope to keep forever still. Hendrik's sensors screened warnings as reality began to buckle around them. The chamber walls showed stress fractures that extended into higher dimensions, and his equipment registered energy signatures that violated several laws of physics. We became guardians, another voice joined, as more beings emerged from their ancient sleep. We put ourselves beyond the reach of hunger, maintaining the seals that keep it contained. But flesh minds, warm thoughts, active consciousness, these things it cannot ignore. Kozlov was frantically working at the control systems, his cybernetic implants interfacing with alien technology in ways that should have been impossible. Commander, I'm reading massive structural instabilities. Not just in this chamber, across the entire planet. Something is pushing against barriers that have held for centuries. Above them, the surface of Calvera 9 began to change. The preserved. Cities started to crack as ancient seals failed one by one. The perfect preservation was breaking down, revealing the true cost of the Guardian's vigil. They hadn't just been sleeping. They'd been using their life force to maintain a prison. The devourer wakes, the first Guardian said, and for the first time since their arrival, Commander Vega understood the true scope of what they'd stumbled into, and it is hungry after centuries of fasting. As the ground began to shake and an unnatural darkness crept across the chamber ceiling, the team realized their archaeological expedition had just become something far more dangerous: humanity's first encounter with a threat that could devour entire civilizations from within. The last stand, the chamber erupted into chaos as dimensional barriers collapsed and reality twisted into configurations that hurt to perceive. The devourer emerged not as a creature, but as an absence, a hungry void that consumed light, sound, and thought itself. Where it touched the chamber walls, the crystalline structure simply ceased to exist. Commander Vega's tactical training kicked in, despite the impossibility of their situation. Kozlov, and you seal the breaches? Everyone else, get to higher ground. There is no higher ground from that which feeds on consciousness itself. A lead guardian communicated, its mental voice strained with effort, as it joined dozens of others in forming protective barriers of pure will. But perhaps ... your kind thinks differently than ours. Show us this human stubbornness we have observed. Dr. Okafor, rather than fleeing, moved closer to the control systems. The preservation field, if I can reverse its polarity, maybe we can turn it into a containment system. Her hands flew over alien interfaces that responded to intent as much as touch. Hendricks coordinated the technological assault, his sensors mapping the Devourer's dimensional signature. It exists partially in our reality, and partially in spaces we can't perceive. But every time it feeds, it has to anchor itself fully in our dimension for microseconds. Tanaka maintained communication with Orbital Command even as spacetime warped around them. Emergency Protocol Omega. Quarantine the entire system. Do not send reinforcements. The battle became a fusion of human innovation and alien wisdom. Kozlov's cybernetic implants, designed for human technology, found unexpected compatibility with the Guardian's biocrystalline systems. His engineering knowledge combined with their dimensional understanding to create improvised weapons that could actually wound a creature of pure hunger. Your species adapts, the Guardian observed with something approaching wonder. We planned for eons. You improvise in moments. Perhaps this is why the Devourer fears active consciousness. It cannot predict the unpredictable. The turning point came when Vega realized the true nature of their enemy. It's not just hungry, it's afraid. That's why it devours civilizations. It's terrified of what consciousness might become if left unchecked. Drawing on every leadership skill she possessed, Vega coordinated a desperate gambit. The Guardians would channel their remaining life, force into one final containment field, while the humans used their ship's reactor to create a dimensional anchor. Not to destroy the Devourer, that was impossible, but to trap it in a feedback loop of its own making. If it feeds on consciousness, let's give it more than it can handle. Okafor shouted over the reality storms. She began broadcasting every human cultural transmission in their database music, art, literature, scientific discoveries, creating a banquet of pure human thought that the Devourer couldn't resist. The entity lunged for the feast, and in that moment of maximum vulnerability, Guardians and humans struck together. Ancient wisdom and human audacity combined to weave a prison not of walls, but of recursive consciousness, trapped that would hold as long as thinking beings chose to. Remember and guard against the hunger between stars. As the dimensional storms calmed and the chamber stabilized, the lead Guardian's form began to fade. We have given much to seal the breach, but you have shown us something we had forgotten, that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from preservation, but from the courage to risk everything for others. Commander Vega looked around at her team, battered but alive, standing among the fading Guardians of a world that had sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy from an ancient hunger. They had come seeking archaeological treasures, and instead become the newest Guardians of a terrible secret. But they were human, and humans never gave up. The watch would continue, combining alien wisdom with human determination, ensuring that the space between thoughts remained forever empty of the darkness that lurked there. The dead world lived again, not as a tomb, but as a beacon proof that even the greatest hungers could be overcome when consciousness chose to fight back.